Welcome to the second of our Campaign Dairies for the World that Fell. Thank you guys for your views, and for some of those that have messaged me with comments, I am very appreciative that as I've been saying, I'm a new TM. Our second session kicked off with much less tech issues. Mostly the internet, there was issues on my end, so I hardwired myself in, which is why you do see a different backdrop on me than it was in my last video. But our session was much better. Very few dropouts, very few reconnects. And we got through, again, another 2.5 hours. We seem to be kind of that 2.5 to 3 hour mark on our game so far. But that's where we feel comfortable at. We've changed our game night from Sunday to Monday, but that's going to also probably have to change with people's work schedules and things coming up in real life. Things do have to change and be very flexible. So as of right now, we're doing Mondays at 6 now, which is why kind of the video is so delayed. But it went really well. So let's dive into this. And when we last left our heroes, our warrior Flint had just been saved by our rogue Lyra. Flint had actually wanted to run to this tree that he had saw, this gold tree. He's all about gold. He wants to make enough money to basically outdo his brother and his father. Well, he kind of got gold vision and went straight for it. They both rolled checks. Lyra rolled higher and pulled him by the scruff of the neck back, which saved him as a black feathered arrow came flashing in and hit the ground right where he would have been. He rolls high enough to actually check and see where this arrow came from. He does see a orcish archer and or scout. We're going to go with orc scout in the trees. And sees that, and I have them roll initiative. Well, they rolled decently well on initiative. Let's see here. Sorry about that. Pull this up here. So we had, what happened is Flint actually rolled really well. He went first, and then we had what they noticed is they actually had a orc acolyte, a spellcaster, going against them. Then it was the scout. Then it was another orc called a peon, basically just somebody that not very well armored, not very strong. Not creations of my own. I actually got these, thankfully, from bought it from the DM's Guild. Someone created it. I will get the name, and I will credit this person and the group that they did, the book that they have, and give a link to it in the box down below once I get the video edited and everything goes through. So after the peon attacked, we had our arcanist, Galen. He went next, and then our rogue Lyra goes, and then Heth, our monk, and the final one, the orc thug, which is a little more heavily armored. I did change this one a little bit from the books, just for a little bit of flavor. Nothing more than that. Didn't even change the armor class, just flavor. And then our bard, Penny, went last. Now, this battle, from a purely DM standpoint, experience-wise, was a deadly encounter. The creatures weren't necessarily that strong, half CR and below, but there were 4 of them, and they were considered to be a deadly encounter, which it could have turned out pretty deadly. We go through, they do it pretty good. The peon gets taken out first. Lyra, she goes after it hardcore, throwing daggers, getting up to it, and Heth, our monk, she goes after it too and damages it. Heth gets the killing blow on it, actually takes a throwing dart and poof, right out the back of its skull. Gone. The next thing that they did is the thug actually got up on top of Lyra and was doing damage. Got her down to 1 HP. She barely survived that encounter. But luckily, Galen was a pretty, I would consider, clutch player in this, even though for the first part of the battle he was not. The player wasn't actually there. He was actually a little late getting to it, but no big deal. I did exactly what the player wanted. Had a little, allow them that if they're missing or they are going to be late, they can give me their actions if they know they're in battle, and I'll play it that way, but if they don't, I'll play it my way. See, our Arcanist, he doesn't want as Galen doesn't want the party to know he's actually a magician. Not a magician, but a wizard, so he kind of does little tricks and stuff with vials. He's an alchemist. Chemist, same thing. An alchemist, and he uses vials and other little sleight of hand, little maneuvers to pulled off that his magic is all of these potions mixed together and used, which I don't have a problem with. It's all flavor. I mean, he still expends a spell slot. It's all still there, but it's all just the flavor of how he does it. So he uses mage armor to protect himself. Didn't even really need it, in all honesty. He didn't take any damage, but he's able to do some attacks to distract the thug while the others damaged it pretty hard. And due to his class we're using for him called Alchemist, along with his wizard that I'm allowing him to dip straight into, he gets a potion he can create for each individual once per long rest, and allows them to be healed. And in that battle, he got Lyra back to full health. And at about the same time as they finish off the thug, the acolyte and the scout are there just digging off damage. Like Flint gets 2 bolts into the thing and brings it pretty low, and it realizes its chance of dying. And Penny gets up to it and slashes it and puts it down to 1 health. And at that point, the orc acolyte's like, "Nah, if I'm going down, you're going down." And he picks Penny up and casts Inflict Wounds, and does enough damage to outright knock her unconscious. Like, she was at full health before this. She had 12 health, and it rolled a 17 for damage, and dropped her. Like, just left her unconscious. But luckily, through a medicine check, our monk Heth actually got straight to her, got her on her feet, did damage, almost did damage, and just distracted it. And then on our bard's turn, she thunderous waved it and finished it off. At that point, the scout, seeing all of its allies go down, Warren just lives off a big cavernous call of something ability I gave it, which actually allowed it to increase its movement speed, tripled its movement speed as a scout, and allowed it to move through the trees easier, and I actually was able to get ahead of the party. The party took they didn't take a short rest. They went in straight after it, didn't search the bodies, and they followed it in. It took them about 2 to 3 hours worth of travel to get in, and they are actually heading towards the tree that I mentioned earlier. They didn't realize at the time that that's where they were headed all along. As they move through the forest. They kept hearing these sounds of battle getting closer and closer. And originally they wanted to avoid it, but a little bit of a plot point that I wanted them to hit. So our monk Keith, she has a map of the area, and as I explained to her, this map actually says the quickest path to where your meet point is with the group of Dragonborn they're trying to save is actually directly ahead. I'll take them past this tree and pretty much right to where the sounds of combat were. Now, once as I was going through it with them playing and everything, they were all not back on nowhere near full health. Actually, they were still pretty damaged after the fact that they had that bit of a heal spell or that heal potion from Galen's character, or Galen, the alchemist. So they weren't necessarily on death's door, but they weren't at 100% either. So it's just one of those things that they chose to continue on. And as I realized, the next part of the encounter before we were playing was just them reaching them and not continuing on. Like, it would just be them reaching them, and I figured, you know what, that's just a little too tame, a little too mundane. But at the same time, I already had them face a deadly encounter. And with this deadly encounter that they survived, but not with full health, I didn't want them to get into a situation that would cost all of them their lives. So what I did is I actually added another 9 enemies to make it... there were 4 they faced with another 9... Just made it roughly around 14 or 15 individuals altogether, this group. And when they finally made it to where they were within sight distance of the trunk of this tree and this battle, what they come upon is a very deadly scene. a group of 10 orcs, to include the scout that ran off, is in combat with these dragonborn they're supposed to be saving. Well, these dragonborn did have guards. They had two what I would consider knights, so they're just your basic warriors, but full armored up knights, a bard and a cleric. Whew, I have to edit that out. A bard and a cleric. The bard had like almost no HP. Both the knights were very little HP. And the cleric was a really strong cleric for that area. I made it so that they would have an ability if they chose to go that way and they chose to be there, or if they didn't, that the Dragonborn would have the chance of surviving, at least some of them. And that's why I created that cleric for. And at the possibility of having them an NPC type character that could help them on battles later on, maybe if they really truly picked up that kind of thing. So what happened is they had a much more powerful orc spellcaster attacking them, and it forced the cleric to cast Sanctuary. But unfortunately, the way it happened is, and for more flavor than the way it actually works, for the D&D, I had that the bard was completely destroyed because they were outside of the spell of Sanctuary, and actually was hit with the fireball. The fireball was not able to go through the Sanctuary. The fireball was not able to go through the Sanctuary spell at all. And it dissipated, and the knights themselves also were outside of it fighting. So the Acolyte was back with the two scouts that were with it, just hammering away at this Sanctuary spell, trying to get past it. And I had set a time limit on how long the cleric could hold it versus how much damage could be done to it. I know that's not normally how the spell works, but I figured for flavor purposes and for dramatic tension, that's how it would go. Now the knights were able; they each had 4. Let's see, make sure I'm doing my. No, they one had 3 on them and one had 4, so I made a total of 7, and the other 3, that was the 10. So each of them actually was able to before dying, and I did rolls to check, and I had a time frame for it. Was actually able to survive long enough to eliminate most of their forces. They ended up leaving only 1 orc apiece. That and then the time frame expired before for my party actually could close the gap enough to do any damage or to attack, that the Sanctuary spell was broken. And when the Sanctuary spell was broken, about roughly the same time, both the knights kind of died within that time period too. So that the only one left was the cleric. And let's see. Sorry, I gotta reach over here. I gotta check my cleric so I can get this information right. The cleric has a good lot of spells, and when the cleric sees it falls, the cleric turns and takes out one of the orc warriors with Sacred Flame and just destroys them right off the bat, like cast, because it is a cantrip. And the way I'm doing it, I allow anything, depending on their spellcaster level, you can cast a spell as long as it's as a bonus action. You can cast a spell as a bonus action as long as it's a cantrip for now. But once they have access to higher level spells, they can actually cast it. You can go no higher than a level 2 spell, but you can cast on a bonus action. So I allowed the double casting of a cantrip for this cleric, and took out an orc warrior and killed one, and then still had the caster and the 2 scouts attacking, and came around and ended up killing off 6 of the Dragonborn they were trying to protect. By the end of it, there was a child lost, 3 adults, and actually it was only 5. Yeah, they only lost 5. So what happened is, each one of these, they did a spell like, magic missile or something, and it went off and it killed individuals. Same with the scouts, they were shooting and they would kill individuals, and the cleric was casting, spiritual weapon and using it, and he killed off one of the warriors with that, just completely devastated it with a sword. And the scouts are being attacked. Well, finally the cleric kills off the scout, and our people are finally within range, and they're trying to attack, but they're rolling really low, so they're missing these attacks and alerts of their presence. Well, our warrior Flint finally gets some good rolls in and hits the caster, as I'm calling it, the orc caster, with some bolts to distract it long enough, and does critical damage. And so right before that critical damage hit, Galen had cast magic missile, but used his potion vials and stuff to make it look like he was using it out of, again, being an alchemist, and damaged it just enough to get its attention onto him. And right as he turned his attention, Flint attacked, and when he did, he rolled a natural 20 and got a critical, and killed the caster. And right as they killed the caster, the cleric ended up killing one of the other scouts. And as that does happen, the last scout, which is again the actual original scout that won these and brought this to their attention, but they were too focused on taking out the Dragonborn party, basically screams at him that this is not over. I will come back with more forces, and looses an arrow, and this arrow streaks off. And I rolled, and I hated what I rolled, but what I rolled was, and I described it to my party, and they looked a little devastated, is the arrow actually killed one of the Dragonborn children. As it was reaching for its mother. Like, it was running, the little child was running up to its mother, one of those things. I know that's a little explicit, but it's for story purposes and for drama for the characters and motivation. I would not ever want to see that or even take anything from that. But again, it's just being a DM and story. It's one of those things that happens. But they make introductions with the Dragonborn cleric. And funny story in the Dragonborn cleric, I used a random name generator for Dragonborns, and the name it came up with me was Raishan. Just like in Critical Role, the Green Dragon, I changed it to Raishan, R-A-E-S-H-I-N-N. Raishan, however you want to pronounce it, like that. But my players really loved the fact that it was that name, and they were like, oh, we can't trust her, oh, we got to kill her, as players, but not in the character-wise. They kind of liked a little bit of a nod to Critical Role. That's how we all got together as a group, was through Critical Role. But, they kind of they had a conversation. They had a simple conversation while others were helping to do medicine checks and force-feed potions to some of the downed individuals. They were actually able to save one of the adults and a child. They were able to stabilize and save the child so that it did not die. So they actually only lost 3 Dragonborn in that encounter, which is impressive because there were a lot of enemies attacking, and the cleric really was the saving point. I didn't want them to get to a situation that they couldn't handle. So, like I said, I added in those extra NPCs to defend, but at the same time, I also didn't want to put it to where they could not at all finish the mission, that they had a chance. Now, there is more in store for them next game. They're actually taking a long rest because they've already been on the road for 9 hours. When they made it to here, they're going to take a very long rest, stay the night, and head back in the morning with this group. And there are encounters planned. There are things that it's not any kind of guarantee that any of them will actually make it back. I wanted them to at least get to the Dragonborn and see what's going on and make their own character decisions to, maybe stay and help if that's what they choose to do, or I have other plot points for them as they go on. But they are now at the point of taking a very long rest and finally recovering and getting those spell slots if they used any back, and healing up and those kind of things, which they really need, because any more than this and a few characters may end up dying. They actually did level up. They gained just enough experience from that whole entire situation to level up. So each of them will actually be a lot stronger come our next session because they did level, and I allowed them each to spend their level up on their long rest. So that is the big thing on that. Doing our best here with this. Like, I have this huge world planned out, and so far they say they love playing in it, love the twists and turns. I may add another player in here soon, and I've got to talk to my players about it. He's really excited to play in this world, and he wants to come in and actually play a player Akashic, which basically, like I said earlier, like last video, is a Jedi. I was hoping one of the players would play it, but since they're not, my friend that wants to come in, he's wanted me to DM for him for a while now, instead of him having to do it, and he really likes playing Jedi or those type of characters like that, and he wants to get in and play and actually have something to do each week besides go to work and go home type thing. So I'm going to talk to my players and see if they're going to be okay with it. Hopefully they are. I want him to come into the world. He's a great guy. His character, from what I'm seeing so far, is going to be fun to have in there, and I want to see how they react with having basically a Jedi or a Akashic in the party with him at all times. We're going to see how that goes, but I don't know yet. We'll see. Like I said, the party has to get back to Greymount before he's introduced anyways, his character. They may technically have already met him if I do this correctly, and I think that would be a fun little hook. They may have already know who he is, but they've never actually talked to him. Just to see how that, when they actually make it back, it goes, once they make it back to Greymount. Again, if you guys have any comments or questions, or just want to give me some general advice, just leave it down in the comment section. And if you enjoy this, or you guys would like something else on top of this, maybe to the point of giving other types of videos, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. Thank you very much for watching the video. The World of Fel will come back to you next week with another video and more adventures from our players. And have a very good day.